Speaking of Tunisia, as Mr. Sakharov mentioned, members of the Tunisian National Dialogue Quartet, who later today will be honored with the Nobel Peace Prize, dedicated their award to their fellow citizens who died on the country's path from revolution to relative stability. The honor comes ahead of the 5-year anniversary to the start of what came to be known as the Arab Spring Revolution, a social and political upheaval whose consequences are still being felt, if not we're living it right now, as evidenced by the news we just covered in the previous item. Now, what went right in Tunisia? Let's take a look at the following report by Mandy Kogosowski. Break it down from there.
The people of Tunisia will have their eyes proudly set on Oslo later today, as the Tunisian National Dialogue Quartet will be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its contribution to building a pluralistic democracy in the country in the wake of the Jasmine Revolution. Earlier this week, quartet delegates were also awarded the highest decoration in France, the Legion of Honor.
We must remain loyal to the forces of democracy and freedom in France and in Tunisia. We must preserve human rights. We must help this young democracy in Tunisia to conserve peace in Tunisia and France and everywhere else in the world.
In December of 2010, Tunisian street vendor Mohamed Bouazizi torched himself after the government closed his vegetable stand. This desperate act of individual protest ignited the country's intense civil resistance campaign, the Jasmine Revolution, which ended in the ousting of longtime dictator Ben Ali in 2011 and in free elections. But the transition did not go smoothly, and by 2013, growing tensions between opposing parliamentary forces placed the democratization process in danger. 4 different civil society organizations, which became known as the Quartet, drafted a compromise agreement between the parties that would allow for negotiations. Elections were held again in 2014, and the country considered the Arab Spring's only success story.
It is so important and so timely right now to put the limelight on what has been achieved in Tunisia as opposed to many other countries, and to try to inspire and help to safeguard those positive results.
But still, democracy in the country is fragile, and the jihadist threat is ever growing. Just last month, a state of emergency was declared after 12 people were killed in a suicide attack on a bus that belonged to the president's security entourage, the 3rd major deadly attack in Tunisia since the beginning of the year.
Joining us live now from La Goulette in Tunisia is artist Rafram Haddad. I want to thank you so much for being with us this morning. You're living, you're breathing the Tunisian democracy. Is Tunisia a democratic place these days and age?
I think it's need to define what is democracy, because you don't see it in the streets. I mean, every day, everywhere in the world. But what is democracy?
No, very true. Continue. Yes, Tunisia.
Tunisia now is in a very fragile situation, like all over the world. I mean, there's terror attacks, which is very global, because it's not local in any way. And Tunisia need to confront actually the past, which was dictatorship, and they were like the Mukhabara, the secret police were like torturing people, and it's like the Muslims in a way that Ben Ali didn't like. And now they need to stand in front of accusation that they do the same, actually. But in the same time, they need to confront the terror, actually, that is widespread here. Not really widespread, but it's like it's a big problem in Tunisia now.
As you mentioned also, the terror being widespread all over the world. You have been going in and out of Tunisia for several years. You're living there now. I'm wondering with you, what do you feel is the change over the course of the last, let's say, several years?
You don't see a big change. You just see the major economical problem, which is not connected to democracy or terror, but it is connected actually to terror, because this is how the works in Tunisia. I mean, there can be a bomb in New York or in Paris, but it will not hurt tourism or economy of these countries, because these countries the image of these countries are much stable than Tunisia one. There can be a terror attack here, and no tourists will come in the summer, which is like one of the biggest income.
Right.
And once you have like 500,000 people unemployed, it's crazy in Tunisia. I mean, it's like it's destroying everything, all the environment. And people here are all about, getting working, getting paid, living. this is all about actually living, about democracy.
No, entirely so, of maintaining a dignified life in many ways. Avi Sachav, with me still in studio, why do we think democracy worked in Tunisia?
I think
democracy as
that
we in
was
the
up.
West, yeah.
I think that was up to the will of good people, of good leaders. And at the end of the day, I think that the Arab Spring failed because of bad leadership, because of bad people, whether it was in Egypt or in Libya or in many other places. In Tunisia, it succeeded mainly even because of the Islamist leaders who were ready, were capable of listening and accepting the criticism and understanding that they need to change.
That they need to change. With us from Egypt is Jake Wirtschafter. In 30 seconds, if you can tell us why you think it didn't work in Egypt.
I think we did not have the sophisticated political Islam leadership that you saw in Tunisia with a French sort of savoir-faire. I also think that the place of youth society and culture in Tunisia is different than in Egypt. I also think we cannot underestimate the role of trade unions, especially the Tunisian UGTT and its historic strength in Tunisian society, where in Egypt the working class really doesn't have a vehicle to express its needs. And I'd also say this, security is prevailing in Tunisia, and there's a crackdown there. And Tunisia has had the outlet for Islamists, meaning Tunisia is the largest contributor of foreign fighters.
Foreign fighters? No, we have to remember that. Sadly, all the time we have coming